Hello there, and welcome to the I Never Knew podcast, also known as Inc. This show dives into the life experiences of people who have been through it all and have come through the other side stronger, better, and triumphant. Each story is raw, authentic, and, at times, heartbreaking. One thing joins it all together: the fact that the stories can help the listener learn and grow. Hosted by life coach Maureen, she sits down each episode with a new guest who will empower the listener to set out on their self-discovery journey and start to heal. Now you'll be joined by Maureen and her special guest. Please enjoy the show.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of I Never Knew But My Dog Did podcast. I am your host, Maureen Scanlon. Happy to see all of you. Okay, in my mind, I'm picturing all of you. How's that? Happy that you all are here, listeners. I'm always grateful. You know that. I shout you out all the time. And my guests and everyone who's a part of this community that we're building to just help humanity and to heal one another. So let me see if there's any housekeeping stuff. No housekeeping stuff this week. I just got back from Vegas and yeah, it was a nice little getaway with the husband and I. We had moved to Texas in March and I needed just like, I needed to get away. And so it was really nice. And it wasn't hot in Vegas, which I was shocked. It was amazing. And that's actually going to bring us, I have a little segment at the end for Kelly that we're doing a new segment. So she'll see what she can come up with, but one of them is Las Vegas related. So without further ado, let me tell you about my next guest. I'm going to say it. I always say it. Every guest I have is freaking amazing, over the top, wonderful, overcoming, triumphant, and Kelly is no exception. So Kelly is a self-proclaimed recovering nonprofit professional. She earned her Bachelor of Science and Master's in Public Administration from Eastern Michigan University. She dedicated her career to the service of under-resourced youth and communities. Near and dear to my heart, a service heart she has. Mendenhall suddenly became medically disabled and lost her mobility nearly entirely. However, the cause of her pain and immobility remained a mystery for more than 2 years. And we're going to hear her story, listeners. But beginning in 2017, Mendenhall endured years of what she refers to as medical gaslighting, and we are so going to get into that. Simply put, she was told time and again by specialists and medical professionals that there was no way she was experiencing pain, loss of feeling and control of extremities, and other symptoms reported. It took 2.5 years of fighting against medical gaslighting to discover a rare centralized disc rupture at the junction of her thoracic and lumbar spines that had grown into a calcified mass, crushing her spinal cord. Oh, that makes my blood boil just thinking about that, of how you were ignored and not taken seriously. Kelly endured 4 neurosurgeries, 2 major abdominal surgeries between December 2018 and October 2020. Oh, honey. And hundreds of test procedures and diagnostic labs. She was permanently disabled by age 40 and has been unable to work outside of the home since age 34. She has not allowed her disabilities to rob her of her self-worth. And definitely when everyone sees her and her smiling face, she's been robbed of nothing. If anything, her spirit is more glowy than ever. So hi, Miss Kelly.
Hey,
Welcome.
it's so good to be here. I can't help but smile because you're smiling. You're like, your energy is so awesome. Like, how can you not smile?
It's because I am so privileged and I always feel so honored that you'll come on and share your vulnerability and your story with me. And I don't take that lightly because that's not an easy thing to do. So Wow, you're amazing. You're so smart. And, it's funny. We always talk about, I always say, source, God, spirit, whatever your higher power is that you believe in will rock the boat or flip the boat. And, it's so funny. You don't know what your future self is going to deal with. And I look at you and that just popped into my head like you had no idea when you were doing all of this service work for the underprivileged and under
Yeah.
resourced youth. So we everyone knows I always talk about the knee story, and it sounds like you had a spine story and more than a knee story. So tell us, when did all of the medical stuff start? And I love the term medical gaslighting because I was a nurse and I spent 27 years in the medical
Ooh.
field, and I'm not anti-medical. I think there are times we need things, but I do
Right.
feel we only treat the symptoms. We don't find the source of the problem. So
Yes.
when did this all start for you?
Well, I had been a person with aches and pains since my late teens because I had experienced some physical trauma. I'd been in some car accidents and things. And when I was in college, I was 23 or so. There was an 8-month period where one guy ran a stop sign and T-boned me on my driver's side, and then like 8 months later, a guy was going 50 miles an hour and rear-ended me while I was at a stoplight.
Oh,
So both of these were obviously things completely outside of my control, and um, that was sort of the beginning of the decline, I guess, of my spine health. But the thing is that I'm also like a poster child for what happens when you don't have health care or access to health care. Because growing up in poverty, growing up with a single mom, my dad passed away when I was 4, and we had a lot of like external life circumstances, and she, in order to be a stay-at-home mom and be involved in every aspect of our life, she started a home business after dad died. So she worked from home so that she could be with us all the time. That meant things like health insurance and whatnot were like really inaccessible to her. And so growing up, I didn't have access to care, and then I'd had some traumas. I'd been assaulted, I'd been in some car accidents, and by the time I was in my early 20s, I was experiencing what I now know as sciatica. But back then, I had no idea what that was. So I used to be like, my ass thigh hurts. And people would be like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, literally from the center of my ass down the back of my thigh, it hurts. And so I had a bulging disc after those 2 car accidents. I had a bulging disc at right where your bottom rib is. So like between where your thoracic spine and your lumbar spine meet, right under your bottom rib. I had a bulging disc and some other things. But no one ever told me what that meant. Nobody ever like I didn't know what the implications or ramifications of such a diagnosis were. And I was in my early 20s, so it's not like I was just like, I'm in college, I'm in grad school, I'm trying to survive. I'll worry about my health later, was kind of how I was operating. And then, so flash forward to my mid 30s, and I was a person who carried around a bottle of ibuprofen in her desk and purse all the time. I kind of thought that was normal, like I'm just getting older. 36 is not old, but like in this youth worshiping society we have, it felt old. And I was like, whatever, I guess I just have like arthritis and aches and pains like everybody else in my family. And then I started having more and more difficulty walking, and it was so painful. I couldn't take full steps. I could just like shuffle my feet a couple of inches at a time. And so that was kind of the point where I realized, okay, I've been doing chiropractic care for a year at that point. I'd been trying to exercise and lose weight and do all the things, and it was getting worse and worse. It was actually a nurse friend who was like, you should maybe go talk to your primary care doctor and let them know that the symptoms are so much worse all of a sudden. So, kind of overnight, I went from thinking I was like a pretty average, typical person with aches and pains to, oh, my left leg is falling out from under me, and it's so painful to walk that I can only shuffle a couple of inches. And uh my left leg, the pain in my left leg, I mean, it was like it was being lit on fire and stabbed at the same time. And the pain, your sciatic nerve is the longest nerve in your body, so it's going from, my hip, or like my piriformis muscle, all the way down to my toes. And um what I experienced when I started seeing medical professionals about this, and specialists, orthopedic surgeon specialists, and all these different things, I think living in Tennessee at the time did not help, especially in a rural part of Tennessee, and I'm covered in tattoos and I'm young, and so the first thing that most of them seemed to think
Drug
was that I was drug
seeker.
seeking. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I'll never forget. So, one of the first guys I saw, Dr. Q, I'll never forget. He said, "I can only make you worse. There's nothing on this scan that would justify why you're having such pain. Me doing anything would only make you worse. You need pain management." And I said, "Okay, well, what does pain management look like?" And he said, "Well, I would give you probably oxycodone and send you to physical therapy." And I said, "No, thank you."
Yeah.
And he looked, and then he looked at me like I was an alien. And he's like, "What do you mean?" And I said, "That's not a long-term care plan.
Good for you.
No, thank you."
Yeah.
I said, "I'm 36. I live with major depressive disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, generalized anxiety disorder. I have addiction on both sides of my family. You're not going to put me on something that's going to cause another problem. We need to find the root of the problem. Why am I having this much pain? Not here, let's cover it up." And man,
Right.
that pissed him off. That pissed him off. I mean, working with doctors,
Oh, well, they think
they
they
don't,
know more than you. And I
well,
hate that.
yeah,
It's like the patient knows more than you do, doctor. I know you went to school for it, but
right.
throwing pills at people and physical therapy, I'm sorry. Hello, I'm not into that. I don't think that's, like you said, a long-term solution.
Yes.
And you being such a great self-aware patient and saying, I have the tendency to have an addiction. I have a
Yeah.
genetic disposition to do it. And all you're going to do is drug me up to not feel it while I'm on the drug. And then I'm going to want more because I'm going to get immune to it. And I'm going to need more
And
and more and more and more.
can we also talk, doctor, about the fact that most pain medications like oxycodone or narcotic medications don't fucking help nerve pain?
Yep.
They might make you so high that you don't care so much that you're in pain,
Yep.
but it's not actually like lowering your pain.
Yep.
The only thing I've experienced that lowers my pain levels is cannabis. And when I said no thank you, that's not a plan, he got pissed off at me, and he goes, "Well, you must not be hurting that bad then."
Oh,
So you're
oh,
either, yeah, so you're either drug seeking or you're just not in that much pain.
like you're
Like,
not in that much pain if you don't want Oxycontin. Oh my,
right.
and I just want to throw up right now. Oh.
And he goes, "You reported that you're at an 8 out of 10 right now. If you're already at an 8 out of 10, I'm only going to make you a 10."
Oh,
Yeah, I swear to God.
and this is a specialist, right? This is
This is an orthopedic spine surgeon.
oh my God. Oh my gosh.
So I said, "But I'll try physical therapy. I'll try physical therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So send me to the pain specialist. I'll talk to him. I'll get the referral for physical therapy." Okay. Well, he didn't send me to a real pain specialist. He sent me to an anesthesiologist who does pain procedures like epidural spinal injections for pain. And I'm not saying that that's not valid, but just because you're an anesthesiologist who can do these types of procedures doesn't mean you're capable of actually caring for chronic pain patients.
Again, back to
This
numbing
guy,
it, just numbing the
right,
pain, covering it
right.
up.
And this guy was that. Like, oh, he was such a prick. He was so arrogant. Um, long story short, he talked me into doing epidural spinal injections 3 different times. All 3 times it caused me more pain, which he didn't believe. It made my symptoms worse. And on one in particular, I couldn't pee.
Oh,
So, you know how they tell you if you suddenly lose control of your bladder or your bowels, that's like a number one, get the fuck to an emergency room.
yep.
I called the surgery center, the outpatient surgery center where I'd had the injection, and I said, I've been trying to pee for an hour and I cannot get my bladder to release. Like, what do I do? And keep in mind, we are talking about the neurological system. So your spine controls, like your spinal cord is literally the driver of the bus, right? So
Yes.
different parts of your spinal column and your spinal cord impact different parts of your body. So he had been injecting things into my lumbar spine, and I'm telling him I can't make urine.
Oh my
So
gosh. I mean, that's your
his nerves,
nerves. Your nervous system is what's going to control all of that stuff. So
your head,
something happened.
your head's gonna want to explode when I say this. So I call and I tell the nurse, and I hear her put the phone like to her chest or something, and she's like, "Doctor, it's the patient from earlier this morning. She's saying she can't pee." You know what he said?
What?
"That's not my problem. Tell her she needs to call a urologist. That's got nothing to do with me."
Oh, oh God. Oh, and you heard that.
Oh yeah, I heard it. And then
Wow.
I heard her sheepishly try to repeat what he had said. Like,
In a nicer way.
yeah, like,
We'll need to
she's
refer you to a urologist.
no, she didn't even change the date. She said, the doctor said that there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to urinate after that procedure and that you might need to call a urologist. And I was like, what in the fuck is he talking about? Those nerves control my bladder. Like,
God.
so, uh, after the third time, and and this is where the gaslighting comes in, because he really had convinced me that, like, maybe I am just crazy. Why would something that's supposed to be helping me feel better make my pain worse? Well, the answer that we know now is that my spinal cord was being crushed by a mass, right? So imagine you're adding fluid into the spinal column that's already swollen and inflamed, and like things are pressing on other things that aren't supposed to, and then we add more pressure and fluid to that. Of course it made my pain worse. Like,
Yeah.
duh.
Yeah.
But we didn't know that at the time.
It's like a
Similarly,
hose you're cutting off. You've like
yeah,
tweaked a hose and
yeah.
it's just adding more and more and it's not going to release. And so you end up with so much pain from the nerves, I imagine. My God.
Oh my God, it was crazy making. The pain was like nothing I've ever experienced before in my life. And because of that, I dissociated through a lot of 2017 to 2020. There are huge chunks of time I don't remember because I dissociated through a lot of it because the pain was just so intense, my brain couldn't take it.
Yeah.
And um there were so many things that I learned the hard way. Like, when you're a chronic pain patient, they always ask you, are you feeling hopeless? Are you having thoughts of suicide? Is the pain interfering with your quality of life? Is the pain making you feel hopeless? Blah blah blah. Yes, 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 yes. I was suicidal every day. I was waking up and contemplating suicide because I was like, if they can't figure out what's causing this pain and they can't stop it, I can't live the rest of my life like this. Like, I'm either going to have to take the drugs and turn myself into a fucking zombie, or I can't do it. I just felt like I just couldn't live through that pain. But I did. Here's the thing. We always think we can't. But here we are, right? And like, so my brain shut down for a lot of it. I dissociated for a lot of it, but I was blogging through the entire thing and I wrote a book through the entire thing. So a lot of what happened, even if I can't remember it, I still have like record of it because I was talking about it very openly as it was happening. And it was in early 2018. I had got a freelance writing gig with blastingnews.com, which isn't like a highbrow newspaper or anything, but I was like, word, I can start writing for money. I'd I asked my mom for a typewriter when I was 8 years old. Like I always wanted to be a writer, and she got me one for my birthday. I started writing stories back then, but I had life got in the way and trauma got in the way, and eventually I lost all that chutzpah that I had at one point that told me I could go be a famous writer and like have a best-selling book and like, you know what I mean? Like all that stuff that I dreamed about, I was like, oh shit. Reality is I have over 100 grand in student loan debt and like can't find a job that pays more than 40 grand.
Yeah.
And, so anyway, uh crap, where was I going with that?
So you were writing and you got
I was
to write for
writing it.
Blasting
Yeah.
News. Yeah.
Yep. And I wrote an article called Women Do Experience Severe and Chronic Pain. And that was the article in which I first wrote the term medical gaslighting and gave a definition to it. And after I had a name for it, it was so much easier to talk about with people because it's really easy to get people to understand the metaphor, right? So if gaslighting in our personal relationships, especially romantic relationships and things like that, if that means that one partner is constantly trying to tell the other partner that they're not experiencing what they're experiencing, that they didn't mean it the way they thought they meant it, it's your perception, it's not me, I didn't do it, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
That's what medical professionals are doing to patients like me. And it happens to women far more often than it happens to men. It happens to women of color far more than it happens to Caucasian women.
Mm.
But pretty universally across the board, women are not believed about invisible illness, chronic pain, anything of the sort. And when I started reading all this research that was showing this, and it was showing like it's easier for men. Men get pain meds in emergency rooms like 60 minutes faster than women on average. And like all these different little things, I was like, what the fuck? Why isn't anybody talking about this? And then in the middle of me going through this, my mom sends me, my mom is so friggin' sweet. She still cuts out physical paper articles from like newspapers and magazines and mails them to me.
Love her. I love her. Oh, mom vibes.
She's the
Mom
best.
vibes.
She's the best. So she sent me this article about the comedian Jim Gaffigan and his wife. Her name's Jeannie, I believe, and she almost died from a freaking brain tumor because
Wow.
doctors were telling her that she was crazy. And I was like, wait a minute. It's happening to me. It's happening to at least this woman. Where else is it going? And I'm a political scientist. I went to school for poli-sci um and public administration, and I wanted to change the world and do all the things. And so I have this like natural tendency to want to look at the data, you know? So when I started researching it, I was like, fuck, this is like the rule, not the exception. And so I started talking about it because no one was talking about it to me. Like I think my first exposure to this idea of doctors not believing women was like a BuzzFeed article where they did a video where people shared stories about like what what they went to the doctor for, like what symptoms they were having, what the doctor said it was, and then what it actually was.
Oh,
And
I bet you people came out of the woodwork because I can name right now, I mean, myself, how many times this has happened. And I can name 10 of my friends who've also had this. In fact, I had a guest whose daughter they diagnosed with depression and an eating disorder, and she died a year later of cancer. So
yeah.
this is extreme. And I'm going to say this, and I apologize for interrupting you, but I'll tell
No,
you
you're fine.
the biggest gaslighting. So I do blood tests constantly. I've been to a rheumatologist and been diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. I have And that's why I have so much. When I read your story, I'm like, oh my God, I can relate. And I have degenerative osteoarthritis in my lower back, L4 and L5. And it never fails. And I'll tell you the two things that are overdiagnosed that are not what the problems are. And I think one of them, maybe you'll totally understand: fibromyalgia. Let's just throw fibromyalgia out there for freaking everything, okay? Because that's what they keep giving me. And they give me these pills for mental whatever to block the receptors. Right. I refuse to take them. I am more naturopath. I completely believe in cannabis. I, however, cannot take cannabis, which is a very unfortunate thing. I have a high sensitivity to it and it makes me really ill. But CBD works.
That sucks.
CBD is
great.
I talked to a cannabis coach, one of my guests, and she's like, you are like the 1%, Maureen, that has such a sensitivity to THC that you cannot take it. I mean, I dry heave, even gummies, even edibles. Wow. I know how much does that suck for me? But I CBD, I'm all about CBD. So the other thing that I have complete heard, especially the gaslighting, is the endometriosis. And it's
oh my God,
super unfortunate.
That's why I had my hysterectomy. Yeah.
Thank you. Did you know that endometriosis, and this is something I experienced, so I've had endometriosis all through my youth. Of course, they don't believe you. Oh, it's probably a cyst. It'll go away. And it's just bad periods. Let's put you on the pill. What I did not know, and I did a study, and this is when I had some major issues, was endometrial cells travel throughout your body. They do not just stay in the uterus. You don't even have to have a uterus. My ultrasound tech actually said she saw endometriosis in someone's eye and someone's skin. Mine happened to be on my colon. And the only way to find endometriosis is to open you up. And the more you open somebody up, the more scar tissue you cause.
I will say now it's a laparoscopic. So I feel lucky because they used to have to really open you up. But for me, I was able to do a laparoscopic, just like, what do they call that? The exploratory surgery.
And
so I was able to do that.
But it still causes scar tissue because you're going in there. And the more times you go in, and you'll see women, I've been on a support group for endometriosis, and the women are like, yep, going in for my 9th surgery. And it's like, so what I did was my own experiment. I started taking CBD when I had my endometriosis, and I told my OBGYN, did you know that when I started taking the CBD, and I'd never taken CBD, and this is just the capsules, literally within, I think it was 2-3 months, it was gone, and it has not it has not returned. And my doctor, I loved my doctor in Arizona. We're in Texas now. I need to find a good gynecologist. But she was like, I'm going to tell everybody. I'll tell I'm like, good. Please do not encourage surgery. Please go the natural pathway. Tell them to try CBD before they do anything else. So do you agree, though, that like those two things are very either overdiagnosed or underdiagnosed? What do you think?
I believe so I have separate thoughts. For fibro, I think that it's the easy diagnosis for some doctors. I think there are very real cases of fibromyalgia. I have a friend with fibro who also has ulcerative colitis, though, and fibro often will be a coexisting diagnosis.
Yeah.
It's all autoimmune,
Right.
And so, but I think it's becoming an easy thing to diagnose women with. And it's known as being like this women's disease, but like I have a male friend with COPD and fibromyalgia who is now having to go through the disability process. And so, I mean, it's not just like the women's disease or whatever. I think that's a misconception.
Right.
And
absolutely.
I think it's the easy thing for doctors to go to when they can't explain pain because you're a woman.
Correct. And I've seen a lot of rheumatologists gaslight, and I've had my own experience with the gaslighting of the rheumatologist, because basically like they did the same thing where it's like, well, you can't be in that much pain. And they make you do the exercises. Can you bend over? Can you move your arm? Okay.
And it's like, yeah, but ask me how much I want to cry after you make me do this, and then I leave here and I have to drive home.
Yeah.
Like, and then for endometriosis, so I'm a perfect example of how underdiagnosed endometriosis is, because the only reason why I pursued that diagnosis at all was because a very old psychiatrist I had, who is now retired, he retired like a year after this all started, or 2 years. uh I had been diagnosed with piriformis syndrome, and so for those who don't know, your piriformis muscle is a little bastard like rubber band that goes from your hip to the middle of your butt. It's in your glute system, and uh, when your piriformis is inflamed or malfunctioning, or if, God forbid, you're one of the people that have your sciatic nerve running through your piriformis muscle rather than over or under your piriformis muscle, uh, yeah, it's painful.
Oh,
So basically, I have this neuromuscular condition that causes constant muscle spasms, and that muscle is bearing down on my sciatic nerve. And I had the psychiatrist who was like, "Have you ever been diagnosed with endometriosis?" And I was like, "No, why?" And he goes, "Well, I've had two other patients who were women who had piriformis syndrome, and they both ended up having endometriosis. And what was happened was that the endometrial tissue was glomming onto their sciatic nerve and in their pelvis and stuff." And I was like, "Really?"
wow.
But I kind of had to put a pin in it and hold on to that information, because the crisis I was going through by this point, like by the 2.5 years into this journey where I finally find out what's going on, I'm losing use of my legs. I'm losing use of my arms. Sometimes my left leg is just falling out from under me and it's numb and there's nothing I can do. I was having these horrible cervical headaches, and I had cervical vertigo where literally no matter what direction I moved my head, I was having vertigo. I had serotonin toxicity because they put me on meds that shouldn't have been mixed at one point. I'd been through a lot. By the time we finally like figured out what was going on, they had tortured me for
Oh
two
my
and a half
God.
years.
And
And
then how how were you getting around? Did you use, because I know I used a cane at one point when I was 38 years old because of my back.
sometimes,
So did you
yeah,
walk
sometimes
her?
I used a rollator walker a lot. Um, uh, for almost all of 2019, I was on a walker because, so it was June of 2019 when they found everything that was happening in my spine, and I had like a myriad of large words that no one will understand. So just imagine that my spine was like a puzzle, that like a 3D puzzle that had been like twisted and like more, in different places. I had a lot of subluxations and stuff where my spine, and then my vertebrae were doing like the fish mouth thing when I moved
Oh my
my,
gosh.
and they were, so in my neck, in July of 2019, I had a cervical fusion at the base of my neck at C6, C7, and they also had to do like laminectomies and stuff where they remove pieces of the bone to relieve pressure. And then in August of 2019, all of a sudden it got to where I couldn't walk again. Like, uh I had taken physical rehab into my own hands at that point. I started working with a rehabilitative personal trainer in like March or April of 2018. And so by this time in 2019, I had been working out, even though I would have to think really hard about what I wanted the left side of my body to do. I was doing water aerobics. I was working with a rehab trainer. Like
Wow.
I was refusing to allow my body to just rot away, or my
Yeah.
brain for that matter.
Good for you. Good for you.
So like
Determination.
literally through all this, I wrote and published my first book. I had a podcast. We performed live in Nashville. I mean, like, I did a lot, but I'd been through a lot by the time we finally figured it all out. So in August, all of a sudden, I can't walk again. I have no range of motion. And at this point, the pain is so bad. I called my pain doctor, he was who helped me find out everything. He helped put the puzzle together. And I called him and I was like, I know that you know how bad I want to stay off narcotics and opioids. And he said, yes. And I said, okay, well, I'm telling you that my pain is so bad. And I'm like crying. And I'm like, my pain is so bad. Like, I need it. I have to have something, and something's wrong. We got to figure it out.
Yeah.
So he said, okay, go into the ER, get get pain management, get some pain meds in you, and then we'll see you first thing Monday or whatever. And then within a very short amount of time, just after having had this neck surgery, that's when we found out about what was happening in my thoracic spine and where the mass was and all this.
How
So
was
then
that missed? I mean, that seems
because they
so.
were
That seems so weird to me. All because I know, they do CTs, they do ultrasounds, they do everything. How was it missed?
they would only do my lumbar spine.
Oh my.
Nobody would look at the rest of my spine until finally Dr. Welker, my pain management doctor, got me in to see uh this neurologist who did like the sobriety field test and stuff, and I couldn't pass it in his office. And he's like, what in the fuck have they been doing to you for the last 2.5 years? And he goes, they've done every test imaginable on your lumbar spine, but they haven't looked anywhere else. And I said, I've asked 3 different doctors for full spinal MRIs. All of them told me no. All of them told me it had to be something in my lumbar spine if it was making my left leg hurt so bad. And all of them told me that there was no evidence that anything was wrong and that I was crazy. And he was like, you are not crazy. You can't even pass a field sobriety test, and I can tell you're sober. Like, he was like visibly upset on my behalf. And so he ordered the full spinal MRIs, and that's how in June of 2019 we found out. We knew that there was something going on in the thoracic spine, but it from that MRI, but it wasn't until August when I suddenly couldn't walk again and it became like an emergency situation. They did a myelogram CT where they pump you full of radioactive goo in your spine, and you're on a table that like lifts and moves around and like goes upside down and shit.
Mm.
And they take x-rays while they're doing that to watch where the fluid in your spine goes, where it's traveling to. And so when they did that, they could see that there was a huge blockage blocking my spinal fluid from moving from one section of my spine to the next. And so then they started putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And even so, I got the surgery in July on my neck, and then um, by October, I had to go back in for a 4-level fusion in my thoracic and lumbar spine. So it goes from the 10th thoracic vertebrae down to the 2nd lumbar vertebrae,
Okay, so
which,
did they end up removing the mass? And we're gonna wrap it up a little bit
yes,
here. So they removed the mass, and then at
yes.
that point, was it too late because you're now immobile and you have?
Yeah. Well, no, it wasn't too late. They had to remove a lot of damage, a lot of bone fragments, get a lot of cartilage out. It was a 7.5 hour surgery.
Oh,
But but I was able to like walk immediately. Like that night I was up walking, and I mean, it hurt like hell.
yeah.
That surgery was the only thing like more intense than that surgery as far as spines goes would have been getting like a full scoliosis correction surgery.
Oh my gosh.
Um so it was pretty like severe. And but no, I got immediately. I had feeling like it took about a year for a lot of my nerves to grow back and things, but I got feeling back below my waist. I hadn't had feeling in my lady bits for like 4 years, and that came back about a year after my surgeries. Um, I, yeah, I was able to like, I mean, I still live with pain, but I was able to regain use of my arms and legs and stuff like that. Um, I wish I would have known that honesty is not always the best policy when it comes to medical stuff, because
Wow.
I feel like if I hadn't told them, yes, I'm suicidal, yes, I live with depression and anxiety, I feel like they just wrote me off as a hysterical woman from the beginning. And if I hadn't have been honest about those things, I wonder if their perspective would have been different. But
That stabs
no,
me in the heart as a mental health advocate, and that
I know.
stabs me in the freaking heart right now, because if we can't be honest about, it's not that I'm suicidal and anxious and depressed for no reason. It's a
Right.
it's an effect of how much pain I'm in, and you're just looking at why I'm suicidal and depression and anxiety ridden. You're not
Yeah.
looking at the cause of that. So
Yeah.
as we wrap up here, um so I love that you said that's the thing that you never knew. And guys, I want to tell you about her book, and I want there's so much more for us to talk about. We could have done this in a
I
two-part
know,
series.
I'm sorry. It feels
No,
like it flew
it
by.
about him because I get so engulfed in it. And I mean literally there's so much I could talk to you about. But guys, wait till you hear like the name of her book, which I freaking love. So tell us what you have going on and how people can reach out to you if they're going through the same thing, and about your book and all the fun stuff that is
Yeah.
you, Miss Kelly.
While I was going through a lot of this, I wrote my first book, which is Skin in the Game: The Stories My Tattoos Tell. And it's a memoir, and I tell uh a rather large chunk of my life story through the stories behind my tattoos, of which there are many and they are varied. I will tell you, Beyonce makes an appearance in my book. Um, there's just there's a lot. I call it it's a story of survival, false steps, and ascension, and the human spirit, because I did go through a lot of trauma from a young age. So I will give content warnings for those that need it. I do talk about my depression, anxiety. I do talk about domestic violence. I do talk about sexual abuse and assault. I talk about all the things that I've lived and experienced, losing my dad at a young age. So just be prepared that there might be some triggers in the book, but I promise you, it's all hopeful, because not only did I write the book and I'm still here, but it's been 4 years since I wrote the book. And uh it's unfortunate it came out at the wrong time. It came out June 1st of 2019. And 5 days later I found out I needed all these urgent spine surgeries. So I was never able to like go out in the world and honor the book as much as I wanted to. Um, by the time I was recovered from all the surgeries and I could go, COVID-19 hit and shut the world down. So I had to cancel all my appearances and conferences and things. So I'm turning my book into a podcast now.
I was just gonna
Um,
say, or you just
yeah.
have to write a part two, or
Well,
second
and
book two.
that's my goal. So this time I don't want to do the indie author thing. I want to land that book deal, and like I want it to get to everyone, because where I will be picking up from is in 2018, when I got my spinal cord stimulator implant to control pain. And so much happened after that and continues to happen. Like, if you get nothing else from my story, please feel hope, because now I'm with the love of my life. He was the boy I had a crush on when I was 14 and 15 years old. Now he's the man that's like literally everything I ever could have asked for or dreamed for. He's my person. Like it's we we both, I've seen him through active addiction and addiction recovery. He saw me through the 2 year mental breakdown that I had after all those surgeries. Like, it's possible, and it's not only possible, it's probable that you can build a great quality of life no matter what your diagnoses are. But you have to be willing to take the helm and be your own best advocate. You have to.
Yes.
And doctor-patient relationships should be cooperative partnerships. They should not be authoritarian dictatorships. Doctors know the human body, but we know our bodies, and you have to stand firm in your truth and insist on getting the care and treatment that you deserve, because no one else can do it for you.
I love
Nobody
it.
else.
I love everything that you just said. And listeners, if you could just if hearing her saying that there is always hope and seeing the smile on her face and the life that she's living now, man, there it is. That's in a nutshell everything that she encompasses, and what this podcast for me is all about is I never knew, and having guests come on to say, I never knew I could be that aggressive and assertive about my advocating for my health. Bam,
Yeah.
bam. We just helped, however many people out there who are like, yeah, I'm going through this whole thing. No one's listening to me. So I thank you so much for being here. Oh my God. You're just amazing. So go ahead.
You asked where people can find me, and
Yep.
I'm on everything like Facebook, Instagram, everything is Kelly J. Mendenhall.
Okay.
On TikTok and YouTube, it's author Kelly J. Mendenhall. And then I've got a Facebook support group. You can find the link on my website, kellyjmendenhall.com. And I have a crafting blog and support community called Stitch and Bitch. And every Friday night we do virtual hangouts where everybody works on crafts together and we just like talk and commiserate. And it's all, a lot of us live with chronic invisible disabilities and invisible illnesses. And we're all really creative people in different ways. We've got a soap maker, card maker, a tattoo artist. There's me. Like, and we just get together and like commiserate and have the therapy of creating. And
oh my gosh, what a fantastic idea. We're being creative, and everybody knows my obsession with creativity, and right now I'm into diamond painting. So
yes,
I love it. I'm going to go join, and that's a Facebook group, Stitch and
yes.
Is it A&D Stitch?
It's Stitch dash the letter N dash bitch colon a blog and support community.
Oh my gosh, I'm so joining that. And listeners, I'll have all of her contact information as well in her episode. kellyjmendenhall.com is where you can reach her. So we got to wrap it up. I was going to do my little segment that I normally do, but we don't have a lot of time because
I'm sorry.
I got a hard stop today, and I don't normally have a hard stop, but it's been a really cool experience to meet you, Kelly. And yeah, we're going to keep in contact because you are just audience. Let's give her an applause because I just think you're fantastic, and you just keep doing that. You do what you do.
You.
You keep persevering and keep reaching out and helping those people that need what you've been through. And I always say every experience we have in life is meant to help someone else who's going to have that experience, and we're going to consistently pay it forward. So speaking of paying it forward, y'all, look at me, I'm a full Texan now. Look at that. Ooh, 3 months and my y'all just came out. Yeah. But so you know where you can find me. I'm at lifecoachmaureen.com. So if you need any kind of coaching, I did, and I have to say I'm super proud of this. I did just complete my certification in coaching my autistic and neurodivergent clients. And I actually have a little secret that I'm going to divulge on this. And I'm sure by the time this goes live, y'all are going to already know this about me. But I did discover that I actually am a high functioning autistic. So kind of cool. Been trying to figure this stuff out for years. My husband and I have really recently seen a lot of things. And by taking this course, it opened up a door for me that was like, oh my gosh. So I go on and I take this quiz. My husband and I both take this quiz for, the first steps, and then you have to go get well, you don't have to get a diagnosis. And I don't think I will. But he gets highly unlikely, and I get highly likely. And it was
Wow.
interesting, and it was kind of like when you get that diagnosis, you're like, oh. So I knew
Yep.
I was ADHD, but didn't realize how underdiagnosed HFA, which is high functioning autism, or autism spectrum disorder, ASD. So HFA is what was formerly known as Asperger's, which they have taken out of the DSM manual, and they've now named it as autistic spectrum disorder level 1. So yeah, so it's kind of interesting, and it's really cool because I have related so well to people with autism, and I've actually coached someone for a couple of years with some cognitive things, and I love it. And watching Love on the Spectrum, I'm like, I need to have people, I need to have my people. So I didn't realize that there really was this tie. So that's my my vulnerable sharing this for the first time ever with the world today. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, if you have any neurodiversity or any autism, ASD, or HFA, contact me, because you know what, it takes one to know one. So who would be a
Well,
better
and
coach without if someone having it, you know?
well, and congratulations to you for finding that piece of the puzzle, because sometimes once I think sometimes out of fear people avoid diagnoses, but like once you know what the beast is that you're up against, you
Yeah.
know how you can work with it. Or
Well, and it's difficult being a life coach and then, worrying about that stigma. But for me, I can't be a hypocrite, because I'm consistently
right.
telling my people, my clients, it's not something to be ashamed about. It's something to address, and something that we learn how to cope with, and we celebrate who we
Yes.
are. So why would I be a hypocrite and hide that from the world? So here I am, guys. I've come out full on.
That's
I'm out of the
amazing.
closet. So life coach Maureen, you guys, if you want to get a hold of me, and if you want to be a guest, please contact me as well. And then my books, My Dog is More Enlightened Than I Am, and My Dog is My Relationship Coach, is also on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Walmart, Target, all those fun places. And don't forget mydogiseverything.net, our boutique for all the healthy and fun safety products. And we've got a bunch of really cute little clothes we have for summer for your puppy. So you can order all of that stuff online. mydogiseverything.net. Love you all for listening. So happy this community is growing, and I've been getting so much feedback and so many reviews, and I love you all. It's so precious to me that it's touching the people that it needs to touch. So I thank you all. Namaste. Until next week, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. Please, please, please. Most of all, take care of those furry babies. Adopt, don't shop. Love you all. See you next week.
Thank you for tuning in to the I Never Knew podcast. If you found today's episode inspiring and educational, please be sure to follow, subscribe, and spread the word. The more people that join the Inc. community, the more it can develop and influence others as we work together for a healthier and brighter future. Until next time.